fellow Americans.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
me ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, and there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You have indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access.
Compelled. Yes. Well, okay. Compelled. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the President now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the Major's. The Major's assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the President have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector. You didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
That I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we're still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get NIH, one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It didn't come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It is molecularly.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is not.
You can't get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth. You are the one.
Time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible to result in SARS-CoV-2.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it. And you admit the truth. And you implying...
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
And welcome everybody into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
So glad to have you here on this show. We cover the news the mainstream media largely ignores, or they put a whole bunch of propaganda on top of it, and then we have to furrow through it to try to bring you the actual story. And we've got a lot of propaganda that we're going to go through today on the show, specifically more about these documents, the Pentagon documents. And I have a theory, I'm going to throw it out there here in just a minute, that maybe we're all being played by this story. And I'm going to give you my hunch, my theory on this. And you can call me crazy, that's great. And then 6 months from now, when I'm right, you can call me other things. But we will look at this. We're also going to look at the latest on the U.S. war roundup, all the places the United States is in wars right now, and what these Pentagon documents say about all of these different war zones. So we'll kind of go through all of this tonight in a war roundup. We'll have like a lasso fest.
All right. I wish we did keep score on the things that we ended up being right about. We don't do that. But maybe we should. It might be very validating.
Why do you do that in our marriage, but not on the show?
Ooh. Zing. Is that where we're going? Because I think I can make a lot of people really uncomfortable if you want to do that.
We should. No, we don't need to go. But we should actually keep a score. David, maybe we could get like a whiteboard, or we could do something where we could actually track. Okay, well, this was accurate. This ended up happening.
We said this, and we were right about that. Yeah, I mean... That way we could say, I told you so. Everyone would come to a show like that.
No.
All right. We do have more humility than that.
Try and be too tough.
What was that?
I was going to say, just remember, don't be too tough because...
I ate my own placenta.
So...
That's right.
Yeah.
You never know.
All right. Well, we're also going to give you a roundup of who is switching to nuclear power and who is not, which countries are politicizing their power sources and which are not. Plus, Saturday Night Live. Are they grooming? Are they not? We're going to discuss that as well. All that and more as Redacted starts right now.
Welcome in. Someone said, yeah, we need to keep track of all the false flag events. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I think a lot of these things end up coming out to be false flags. And that's what we need to be aware of. So,
and I do want to say, when I mentioned keeping score, a lot of it is because Clayton will pitch these stories and I think they're totally crazy. And I'm like, what's that about? And then I start looking into them and I'm like, oh, there is something here. Okay, let's look into this. And then a lot of times you end up leading towards a place that ends up being very valid. So, whereas I tend to stay to the middle and then question everything. And I'm always shocked. So it's not me.
But it's a good balance because I'm like, wait a minute, I see the crazy in these people. And I go right for the cynical sort of crazy side of things.
Yeah.
Because, and you're more like, wait, you're more cautious on it, which is fine. That's a good balance. It keeps us, each in check.
We can't both be crazy.
Right. Exactly. I'll be the crazy.
I think we could do that on the website. So we could have a section that says my prediction. And then, you could sort by that so we could go back and see what were all the predictions in the articles.
Sure. But, we're willing to be wrong as well. I was listening to the J.K. Rowling podcast, the end of the witch trials, and she's talking about, if I'm wrong, then great. All of these trans people are not being hurt by medication and surgery. Wonderful. But if I'm right, then you're hurting children. And so, a lot of these things, we err on the side of trying to speak for people not getting hurt, speak for peace and that kind of thing. And if we are wrong, we should say so. We're willing to do that.
Right. And if we're right, then that means perhaps millions of people's lives are saved. So I'm going to err on that side. I'm going to err on the side of people's lives being saved.
Generally, because again, if you're new to this show, our main platform is peace. And anti-war and anti-industrial complex, military-industrial complex, anti-homelessness industrial complex, anti-medical industrial complex, all of those things. No industrial complexes, basically. Can we have a shirt that says no industrial complex?
No industrial complex. We do have a website, or we do have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. We'd love for all of you to come and sign up for it. If you go to redacted.inc, again, it's totally free. It's the best newsletter in the world. It'll kickstart your morning. You will have a lot of fun with it. It brings a ton of value. So just go there. It's not .com. It's redacted.inc. Put in your email address, sign up, and you'll receive a welcome email. You have to verify it. Verify your email address, and then you'll receive that welcome. Congratulations. Hey, you've become a rebel. Welcome to the team. And then tomorrow morning at about 6:30, about 7 a.m. Eastern time, you'll receive a newsletter in your inbox. So make sure it's not in your spam folder. Drag it out of your junk folder. Google loves to shove us in those places. When we first started the newsletter, they labeled us as dangerous. Like that was, people were saying, oh, we're getting dangerous labels on your newsletter because we're telling the truth about what's happening in the world. So, if you have a Gmail account, be very careful. Put us in your inbox and hit verify and VIP us, whatever. And that way you should be good to go for tomorrow's newsletter first thing in the morning. All right, should we get to the news? Let's do it because we got a lot to get to. I'll start by asking you this question here. Are we all being played with this Pentagon document leak story? Just let that set in for a second. Are we all being played by this story? I'll give you my hunch on this in a moment. But first, it's time for your U.S. War Roundup. These are sort of a check-in on a bunch of the places the United States is currently provoking war around the world. Remember, the real story isn't Russia. It never was. The real story is China. So let's all remember that as we head into this news block and this news update. Always remember it's China. That's the biggest enemy. That's where the United States is putting all of its attention. They use other proxy wars, all driving our attention towards China. That's the main point of all of this. That's our main enemy number one. So it is interesting that the United States is starting to admit publicly now that all of those sanctions against Russia might not actually be working. They might actually be failing. And the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, who came out in this interview, and it's now reverberating kind of around the world, what she said, and here's a Barron's quote about it, that sanctions may risk U.S. hegemony of the U.S. dollar.
That's not the purpose.
Right. Like, wasn't the purpose really to undermine Russia? It was to undermine Russia. They were going to become crawling back on their hands and knees. They were going to become impoverished, right? Their GDP would crumble. The ruble would crumble.
And they would feel so hand-tied that they would retreat from
Right. That
Ukraine.
was the idea, right? That's the whole idea.
Not only that, but the average citizen would rise up and overthrow the government that we don't like. That's the other side of the sanction coin.
Yeah, exactly. Very good point. Yeah, they'd overthrow Putin, right? So there'd be an Arab Spring, right, in St. Petersburg, right? That's what would happen. So that didn't happen. In fact, the U.S. dollar has been suffering tremendously as a result of that. And U.S. power, we've been highlighting this now for many months, how U.S. sanctions in Russia, Western sanctions, are crushing the U.S. dollar. In fact, it's leading to a pullback from Western hegemony, the U.S. hegemony as the world's reserve currency. So Janet Yellen was asked about this on Sunday with Fareed Zakaria, and he asked a very pointed question about U.S. dollar power and what this means. And I think the reason that she answers this question sort of honestly is that I think she's putting out the little nuggets here that, hey, yeah, maybe things aren't going as well in Russia as we thought, in Ukraine. So maybe it's time we really need to really just start focusing our attention on China. I think that's perhaps why she says this. Watch.
Let me ask you about one of the costs or one of the prices of these sanctions. The way that the United States has used sanctions often, in this case, in the case of the Iran nuclear deal, is to use the power of the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. But that weaponization of the dollar has produced a reaction. This week, President Lula in Brazil said, why are we all being forced to use the dollar? Emmanuel Macron made reference to the dollar in that same way. The European Commission has talked about, after Trump pulled out of the Iran sanctions, talked about creating an alternative to SWIFT, to the American-dominated payment system. Is there a danger that we will look back at all this, these measures and say this was the moment that the dollar's hegemony and its status as reserve currency began to falter?
So there is a risk when we use financial sanctions that are linked to the role of the dollar, that over time it could undermine the hegemony of the dollar, as you said. But this is an extremely important tool we try to use judiciously and in circumstances, especially when we have the support of our allies. It's not just the United States, it's a coalition of partners acting together to impose these sanctions. So it is a very effective tool. Of course, it does create a desire on the part of China, of Russia, of Iran to find an alternative, but the dollar is used as a global currency for reasons that are not easy for other countries to find an alternative with the same properties.
Oh, but they are, aren't they?
Oh, we talked about why about 2 weeks ago when we talked about the history of that hegemony and how it was obtained through foul play. So, yeah, other countries don't know how to do that. They don't know how to play that game.
So it's funny because that's why something smells very, very fishy to me about these Pentagon document leaks. And it's all sort of tied together here. Because, again, we're hearing about this now. She's telling us this. And I think in many ways, these Pentagon, it's giving it cover to something here. Are being played like a fiddle? Like it's our job on this show to call out these things when I feel like we're being played. So I'm just going to kind of put these theories out there and you make your own determination about it. But the Pentagon, kind of in the same 24-hour period, then comes out and says, we simply don't know how many documents were leaked. We really don't have a handle on this at all. And these things are going to be leaking now for days and weeks. And we know more is coming, they're telling us now. This is Pentagon spokesperson, Department of Defense spokesperson, Sabrina Singh. And she said in this headline, Pentagon doesn't know how many documents were leaked. U.S. Department of Defense is still trying to understand the scope and scale of the document leaks. And we're going to continue to find documents, she says, and we just really don't know. But yeah, they're going to keep coming, guys. But we really caution you, don't report these. We want to reiterate what John Kirby said the other day. Don't put these things in the newspaper. Don't put these things on television. You guys, don't do it. It's like parents telling kids, there's a candy closet that we have. You're not allowed to go in there.
Do you get the feeling that the United States is not organized after all the classified documents showing up at presidential homes and now leaks of documents from the Pentagon? It just really feels to me like the screws are not tight.
Well, so maybe it is that sieve and you see it that way. I'm just saying, I really feel like now that this is all part of a plan, that this is planted. But let's let Sabrina Singh, explain why she starts off her press conference addressing this and how there's more documents coming, basically, and answers questions about it.
At this point, does the Pentagon have a better sense of just how many documents were leaked and the larger scope? It seems like documents continue to surface in different media reports. Do you have a better sense of how wide the damage was?
Well, two things. First, I'll say that this is an ongoing investigation being led by the Department of Justice. So we are consulting with them on an ongoing basis, but that investigation will reveal more documents that have been previously posted. And again, we're doing our own internal review assessment. As I said at the top, this is being led by our Intelligence and Security Department to get a better assessment of what documents were disclosed and where they surfaced online.
Okay. So, we just aren't really sure. It's going to keep coming. We're not really sure, but we're assessing all of this right now. It's an internal investigation. And so you immediately we immediately got the guy, though, 21-year-old guy. He's a 21-year-old airman who puts these documents on a Discord server. Like, okay, we got the guy. We got cameras there. We're all over it. It's all over in the newspapers, and we're all over it, right? So then I don't know. This whole thing smells weird to me. Do you not agree? Do you guys have? Am I just the only one here? I just feel like that this is all.
You're not telling us where you're going. You keep baiting. I'm going to tell you my theory, and now we are how many minutes into the show? So can you just say it?
Well, that is my theory, that this is all planted. I just said it was planted.
Why?
Why? Because they're all putting it out there to drive us towards China. They're dropping these documents out there so that they can show us things we already know. Troops are in Ukraine. Yes, we already knew that. But now we have confirmation that U.S. forces are in Ukraine. Okay, so we know that's what these documents show us. Things are not going well for our for Ukraine. Things are bad in Ukraine.
So it's like...
But China is the threat. Because here, look at this. This is another thing, part of these documents. Look at this. This is exactly why. So here, China agreed to secretly arm Russia, leaked Pentagon documents reveal. But wait a second. The Department of Defense said that they have no evidence of that. So the leaked documents tell us that, wait, in fact, this is exactly what they were warning us about. This was the red line that the Biden administration warned us about that could push us towards war with China, that if they are arming Russia, that's it. Game over. Oh, that's what the documents show us?
But China this week said we actually are not going to arm Russia. They've been saying that all along. We have always known that this was a big game talk from the United States. So it doesn't matter if the Pentagon says it or John Kirby says it or the State Department says it. It really does not matter who says it. If you're paying attention, you know that it's always been a red herring by the United States. So it doesn't change the game. I guess what I'm asking is, are you saying that the United States is giving itself an excuse to give up on Ukraine and then go balls to the wall?
Going
balls to the wall.
Balls deep in China.
Balls to the wall. Okay.
Well, and I always, if they're doing you got to understand, like anytime that they are out in public, it is highly planned. They know exactly what they're doing. So anytime they're having interviews, anytime they're talking about anything, you have to know that that's the narrative that they're trying. So you have to look outside of that to be like, okay, what are they really doing? And it's hard to find. Like you have to work your way out around the fringe and work your way back in to figure out what in the hell are they actually doing by saying what they're saying here.
Right, because when John Kirby came out, right? So John Kirby came out in that press conference and he says, and this was set off alarm bells for me. This was the first moment when I was like, wait a second. There was a couple of moments like this, but this was a big one for me because normally they deny anything. They won't talk about it. If they're really, first of all, like the Nord Stream pipeline stuff, right? They are hiding it, obfuscating, won't talk about the Seymour Hersh stuff. They, all of that stuff. But when you have a direct confrontation like this and you tell that reporters don't cover this stuff, don't put it in the papers, and you get this statement, watch John Kirby.
Again, without confirming the validity of the documents, this is information that has no business in the public domain. It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the pages of front pages of newspapers or on television. It is not intended for public consumption, and it should not be out there.
So you think it's a don't throw me into that briar patch type thing, like Brer Rabbit, the I don't want to go there, but you really want to go there.
I still have the flu, so you got to help me out here a little bit.
I don't want to, they want you to look, but by saying not to look.
Yes, exactly. It's like, it's my candy it's the closet candy analogy that I just made. Hey kids, mommy and daddy just built an entire closet that's devoted to Reese's peanut butter cups and M&Ms, peanut and M&Ms. Do not go in there. Okay, we're going to the movies. We'll be back tonight at 10 o'clock. You guys put yourselves to bed.
Yeah.
Like, he's telling you exactly what to do. We want you to publish these things.
So it'd be pretty clever because at this point, most of us know that everything they say is a lie. So if they plant their lies under, as a...
Exactly.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Now you're getting it because now you're one step ahead because that's what I'm thinking here is everything that comes out of John Kirby's mouth is a lie. We know this. It's verifiable. This U.S. State Department and these clowns at the Pentagon have been lying to us over and over and over again. And so now they're telling us the truth about these documents. They're telling us, we're not going to verify them, but we are kind of verifying them, but we don't want you to report on them. But what the documents show us is exactly what they want us to hear, which is focus on China. David, go ahead.
But you're calling them lies, but they're more like bluffs because it's like a poker hand. They know their hand, and they're going to try to make us think they don't have that hand. So they're bluffing more than lying because the lies are verifiably false, right? But like the bluffing is harder.
Yeah. And it's almost like, like a hashtag. Like leakers are really popular these days. People like them. Let's put some news behind that. It's the new
and
hashtag.
it also gives the added benefit of making it look like the media is doing their job. Because, you got to stop publishing this stuff. You got to stop asking these tough questions of us. It gives that false narrative that the media is actually like policing the government, which we know they're not.
Except they haven't been. That's the thing, is that they acted, upset about this news coming out through unofficial channels.
Right. Yeah. We're upset about this. So the Taiwan news reported last night in your war roundup that more U.S. forces have arrived in Taiwan, like right on schedule. Hey, perfect. With this document dump that suddenly China could overwhelm Taiwan in no time. New U.S. military trainers have arrived in Taiwan to basically curb what they see as increases in Indo-Pacific Command dispatches from China, and how to sort of counter what the Chinese, the PLA, is doing in this region. So we're going to send trainers to do that, even though the documents showed us that Taiwan would be overwhelmed within like minutes, basically, if China wanted to invade their own territory, which is Taiwan. So again, the documents show us how weak, I guess, Taiwan is. And so we need to send more forces there because of the Chinese threat. So again, it all comes back to the documents supporting more of a proxy war against China. This is all part of the plan.
Isn't it crazy that they turn it around and they use this language intentionally? They're trainers. They're not boots on the ground, because if they say boots on the ground, we're going to be like, no, we don't want boots on the ground over there, but we're putting trainers. We're sending special ops, things that are, outside of the military purview, that it's not boots on the ground.
Well, they don't even call them special ops. You're even giving them more credit.
And they don't even wear boots.
Right. No, trainers is what they'll call them. They'll call them like coordinators. Like, we're just sending Joyce the coordinator. She's the happy coordinator. Oh, really? No. These are special forces. These are actual troops. These are not just coordinators and trainers. There's thousands already there in Taiwan, as we've been reporting for 2 years on this show. So here is how the Department of Defense describes what the document showed us about Ukraine. Here's what Sabrina Singh had to say about boots on the ground in Ukraine, how they describe them.
And finally, I also want to take a moment to address something we've seen in press reports that warrant us relaying the facts. With regard to the U.S. military presence in Ukraine, we've publicly acknowledged previously that there is a small U.S. military footprint in Ukraine to provide mission-critical support to the U.S. Embassy. To be clear, there are no U.S. combat troops conducting combat operations in Ukraine. And while we're not going to go into the specific disposition of our forces, for OPSEC reasons, their duties include support to the Defense Attaché Office in support of our security assistance programs and end-use monitoring, as well as U.S. Embassy security support. This is not new, and again, something we've been transparent about and publicly with Congress as well.
I like, let me see who said that in our chat here. Let me just scroll back if I can. It goes by so fast. Hermie Elf in our YouTube chat tonight says, they're safety enhancers. They're not troops. They're safety enhancers. That's right. Safety enhancers. So I love
the volunteers.
The volunteers. I love what she says here, though. Oh, they're only there to help the embassy. They're just there to help the embassy staff. Right.
They have a lot of visas to process.
Let me ask you this. So do we have Russian troops at the Russian embassy protecting their people here? Do we have troops from other militaries that's protecting their embassies in our country? Is that just what we do now?
That's all we do. No, that's not at all what we do. These are not people just protecting the embassy, like making sure that everyone has Keurig cups refilled in the commissary. Like that's not what they're doing. That's not why they're there.
You're sure?
I just feel like that they would have a Keurig machine. Awful coffee in one of those places.
It's Nespresso. It's got to be.
No, Nespresso is really good, but Yeah.
And Joyce needs to walk to her car every evening. So
right. So they got to take care of her. And then I'll kind of get you out here on this story about Ukraine and your little war roundup here. These are just some of the proxy wars the United States is involved in. So Matt Gaetz has introduced a new bill in Congress that would force President Biden to disclose military involvement in Ukraine. It's a nice idea, but as we wrote in the newsletter this morning, it probably won't pass. Probably has no chance of passing. It's called the Privileged Resolution of Inquiry. It was introduced by Gaetz, and it's an idea basically to say, hey, we know that there are forces there according to these documents, but we as members of Congress need to authorize this if they're going into a war zone. Why is this even a bill in the first place? Like the fact that we have U.S. forces in these proxy war zones without congressional approval should be illegal. Like, why do we then have to add another layer of a bill on top of it? Oh, it's because the executive branch has just given them unlimited war powers for the last 25 years that never sunset. And they just continue and they keep renewing them, they keep renewing them, they keep renewing them.
Right.
So,
well, then unfortunately, the people proposing the bills or supporting those bills are always the fringe. They're the ones that are out here on the fringe, and the middle all support the war. So the bill's not going to go anywhere, and we already know that.
No, and because Matt Gaetz is a polarizing figure, it gives, the left, the liberal left that was once anti-war, an excuse to say, well, he's crazy. He's just putting up stuff to make himself seem less crazy. We're not even going to listen to him. And so, you recall that Congress didn't show any interest in tracking the monetary aid that Rand Paul introduced into the $40 billion aid package. He tried to stall it and then eventually just capitulated. No one wants to count dollars, and no one wants to count lives either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we don't care how much money is being spent in Ukraine. We don't care how much money has gone into the pockets of corrupt people, how much money is lost and disappeared altogether. And we voted to not have an audit mechanism in place. And we probably don't care how many American lives would be at risk here. So we're going to vote against that as well. So imagine now that this bill is out there, call your member of Congress and demand that they vote for this. Look up your local representative. Find out who's going to vote for this bill. It's the same people that continued to vote for support in keeping American troops in Syria, in an illegal war in Syria, a dirty war in Syria.
Which was never formally declared a war, even though people died. People risked their lives, continue to do so, right? And so if you think about if you're the kind of person who has your child sent into these war zones and they're not formally declared war, it's an insult to the sacrifice that they are risking. And also, they're just, there are many benefits that go into veterans who have worked in active combat zones, and these veterans are not going to get that if it's not formally declared a war by Congress. We may never get a formal war declaration, but we may never end wars either. That's the irony of it, and it's awful.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Am I crazy about this idea, this theory? I'm just putting it out there. I think that this whole document story is very fishy. The timing of it, the release of it, the kind of quick arrest of a 21-year-old airman, and the fact that they still inside don't know how these documents got out, but they still say that more are coming. They know that more are coming. It's all very, very shady. And all of the documents support less like getting out of Ukraine, but focusing fully on China. It's all plays right into their narrative.
It's not like that kid ran out of there with boxes of paper documents. It was a digital document that he uploaded. They know how much is there. There's no way they don't. It's like maybe he has more, but he's not exactly free to deliver it, is he?
Right. So what's amazing? What's amazing to me too is that a month ago he published them on this Discord server, right? But then no one saw them. A few people saw them. And then it wasn't until then they were then taken and then published on another, someone took it and then I was like, oh, we'll publish it over here. And then it started getting legs. You have to wonder, these little seeds are planted, and who's planting these little seeds, and who's making sure that they're growing and watching all of this. Mm-hmm. I just find it all very, very fishy. We got more news to get to on your Tuesday. We're going to talk about how Portugal stands up to the United States in a flashback, and how Brazil is doing the very same right now as it relates to Ukraine, saying, hey, to stop telling us how to interact with China. Could this portend a change in relations between the United States and Brazil, United States and Portugal, other countries like France, who are also saying the same thing about China? We'll get to that. And we're also going to look at the energy crisis that's only 8 months away in Europe, as this winter that we just had was never going to be the one to worry about. Now that all of those reserves are depleted, the real focus is going to be in 8 months when the energy crisis hits and they don't have any fuel in Europe. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, we are facing some big interest rate cuts. Perhaps that's what the futures markets are telling us in July. Why would the futures markets be telling us that? Well, the Fed told us last week because we had softer than indicated inflation data, and that means recession. Getting up and gearing us up for a recession. Preparing us was Fed Chief Jerome Powell. So what that means is you saw gold almost hitting an all-time high, getting close to that. Silver as well. So again, people, and that's why Wall Street's kind of going crazy right now and being happy about this, because profits will go up for them. They'll be fine, but it's going to be the little people that get screwed, right? That's who's going to be hit hard in this recession. So how do you protect your family right now when the US dollar goes belly up, which all signals indicate that's where it's headed, folks? Artificial printing of money, US dollar hegemony going down the toilet, protecting your family using actual precious metals. That's something that Natalie and I both do. We are big believers in making sure they have real tangible assets, gold, silver, real estate. That's what we believe in. These are things that have sustained for 5,000 years. So they're not it's not like a Johnny come lately, right? Going back to Roman times, Romans used real estate, gold and silver, right? They owned real estate, rental real estate. They owned gold and silver. And that's how it works today. And so our friends over at Lear Capital can help you get set up with a gold-based IRA account. And it's amazing. What it'll do is you can grow your gold tax-free inside of a self-directed IRA, and they'll help you get it set up. So imagine having, like a retirement account, but it's not tied to the craziness of the stock market. It's not tied to a government-backed portfolio. No, it's tied to actual tangible items. And you can do that with a gold-backed IRA. You can call them at 1-800-613-3557 or go to learredacted.com and you get a free gold and silver investor guide when you call them. Just tell them and they'll walk you through like what they offer and see if it's a good fit for you. And maybe if you've got a few $1,000s in a savings account that's been sitting there, or an old 401k that you want to roll over, you can roll that over into this self-directed gold account. It's really fantastic. There are a lot of gold companies to choose from. Lear Capital has over 25 years experience, thousands of 5-star reviews, a risk-free guarantee, gives you 24 hours to review your purchase before committing to it. Lear Capital is a top choice when buying gold and silver. So call them today, 1-800-613-3557, or go to learredacted.com. Get your free gold and silver investor guides and receive, guess what? You can get up to $15,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. $15,000 in bonus metals with a qualified purchase. Check them out, 1-800-613-3557. All right.
All right. Very good. You doing all right?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for
Anything
asking.
to add?
About metals?
No, I'm going to fill
about
just
stories?
life in general while I fill up
Okay.
I'm going to fill up some water here.
Did you give yourself agua con gas and you gave me flat water?
No, you told me that you weren't drinking because you were wearing red lipstick. It's water.
I did. Okay.
It's water, so it's just regular water.
All right. Yeah, because I love this cup and I feel like it would be gross if you guys had to look at lipstick on the rim. So.
Yeah, it's our new redacted mugs, so you can check them out.
No one likes to see that. You always see that on
redactedstore.com.
On the morning shows on network news, and I'm like, that's yucky. Use a straw.
Or just don't use red lipstick. Or it's also in the commercials for like your dishwasher doesn't work. Like someone takes a mug or a wine glass like out of the dishwasher and it still has that red lipstick on it.
Yeah, that's gross.
You could just switch to white. Just switch to white lipstick. Problem solved.
as I could. It would still be just as funky. I mean,
everybody'd be like, where do her lips end and her teeth start?
Ladies, I'm a lipstick wearer. I just don't want to put that on you. You shouldn't have to look at it. So
Spooky Spoon says, "Feel better soon, Clayton." Thank you so much. Yeah,
I know. Look how red your poor nose looks.
It's been this flu that we got. This has been the worst. This is the worst flu I think I've ever had
since COVID. It was just as bad.
Yeah,
as when you had
going like
COVID.
15 years ago, I had pneumonia really bad. That knocked me on my ass.
It wasn't 15 years ago. Ava was a baby. And
Okay.
she's
So like
going to be
10
11.
years ago,
Yeah.
11 years ago. Yeah, this one, ooh, bad. And our baby, our 6-year-old right now, she's still suffering. Today, she had a fever of 105.
It was awful.
It got up to 105
I freaked
today.
out.
So yeah, it's been a crazy day around the Morris hacienda.
She's doing much better now. I haven't seen those numbers since, but
somehow we're
yeah,
here.
I freaked. You know, I have a friend who was saying, you know, these mutations, they just don't feel natural. These mutations that are currently going around.
Yes.
And it's definitely not COVID, but you know, it feels like this is something that
Bill Gates, what are you doing to us?
This grown man on his ass for a
Yeah.
week. Think of what it's doing to our 6-year-old right now.
Nothing knocks me down, and this thing knocked me down tough. But I really, I really feel like, and I said this to a friend of the show. He's been on the show a number of times. Kevork Almasian. Sorry, my brain is fried from this flu. And he got COVID really, really bad a couple of months ago, and we were talking, and I said, I'm going to say something that's kind of weird here. I felt like it feels artificial. Like it feels like this came from somebody, you know, like they made this somewhere, because I've never in my life felt like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so this time, I know I don't have COVID this time. Well, who knows what the hell it is, but it feels like something I've never felt before.
Yeah.
You know?
I know Clayton's really sick when his hands are cold and he's moaning. It's like, moaning. Yeah. All right.
All right, let's get back to the news. All right, hey, it's a new segment we're starting here on Redacted, and I'm very excited about it. It's called Flashback. Covering an important geopolitical story that didn't get much coverage at the time, but certainly deserves to. So in tonight's Flashback, the beautiful country of Portugal. Amazing country, the most amazing people in the world. They tell America to go shove it when it tries to tell them what to do about China. So we'll get to that part of the story in a second. But first, the reason this story has relevance today, in part because Brazil is saying something very similar to the United States about Ukraine and its relationship with China and all of this. You see a common theme here. Like, hey, what we're doing with China is none of your damn business, United States. So the two largest Portuguese-speaking countries in the world telling the United States, stop telling us what to do about China. We've been around a lot longer than you have. And just because you bully the rest of the world doesn't mean we don't get to invest with our own interests here. Make our own minds up. We're smart people here in Portugal. We can figure it out. Go back over there. Go back and fix your own cities like Chicago and San Francisco. Go back and fix your own country right now, which, by the way, is crumbling. Stop telling us how to interact with China. This week, Brazilian President Lula da Silva was asked about ending the war in Ukraine. He said that the U.S. created this war. They have no interest in stopping it, of course, and China plays an important role in trying to end it. How did that sit with the Biden administration? Let's watch this amazing moment.
É preciso ter paciência para conversar com o presidente da Rússia. É preciso ter paciência para conversar com o presidente da Ucrânia. Mas é preciso, sobretudo, convencer os países que estão fornecendo armas, incentivando a guerra, a pararem. Eu acho que a China tem um papel muito importante. Eu continuo reiterando que a China possivelmente seja o papel mais importante. Agora, outro país importante é os Estados Unidos. Ou seja, é preciso que os Estados Unidos parem de incentivar a guerra e comecem a falar em paz. É preciso que a União Europeia comece a falar em paz, para a gente poder convencer o Putin e o Zelensky de que a paz interessa a todo mundo e a guerra só está interessando, por enquanto, aos dois.
Isn't that great?
Tem emoção.
What's amazing too is that, like,
man, I wish
Go ahead.
I wish he wouldn't do stuff like that, because now I can't tell if the U.S. likes him or not. Do we like him? Do we not like him? I thought we really liked him, and now we don't like him.
We liked him. You weren't supposed to say that.
Yeah, we invited him to the White House, right? I mean, Biden, kissing him up and down after he won. So the White House then lashed out at Lula da Silva over these comments. And I love this too. And they called him, it's amazing, calling da Silva misguided. It's bad when the dementia patient running the White House calls another leader misguided. Here's John Kirby saying this, and I'll read it. Brazilian President Lula da Silva is parroting Russian and Chinese propaganda, John Kirby says. He says the U.S. needs to stop, da Silva said the U.S. needs to stop encouraging and start talking about peace. The European Union needs to start talking about peace. So Kirby says, well, in this case, Brazil is parroting Russia and Chinese propaganda without at all looking at the facts. It's misguided. What exactly did he say that was misguided? Can anyone in the comments let me know what he just said that was misguided? The U.S. is
point out where we know that.
Go ahead.
We know that John Kirby's word is truth. John Kirby's word is truth because he's told you, and so if he's saying it, then that automatically means they're parroting the propaganda, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
so. Well, it wasn't Kirby that said that; it was that other dude. But yeah, same world. But yeah, I mean, it's like show us where you're talking about peace. Then show us how he's wrong instead of just saying he's wrong. Prove it.
Right.
Yeah.
Where has the United States been encouraging peace talks?
No, in fact, when China was headed to Russia, the President Xi Jinping, the United States said, we do not want peace right now. They literally said that. So what Lula da Silva said was they don't speak about peace, no falar de paz. That they just don't say those words. They have no sentences about it, and neither does the European Union. And so, yeah, you can, if you are going to talk about peace, let's do that.
Yeah.
Those are the facts.
Exactly. So there's nothing he said there. The United States is encouraging the war, right? Which is to have, because it's not about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, he's actively saying number one is the United States on this list. And you also have Emmanuel Macron. You have other leaders now saying the exact same thing. So the cat is out of the bag here. Everyone knows the United States is the provocateur of this entire thing. Everyone with a brain understands that. So again, that's why the United States is upset about this. So can China broker peace here? I mean, that's what Emmanuel Macron went to China to solicit, and it appears that, and he said the very, very same thing. So, and then the White House slammed Macron, basically saying, well, that's, he's out of step with the rest of the European
I thought we were
Union.
Friends. Yeah, all of these people.
So it's pretty funny. So that's Brazil. But of course, in Portugal, that statement, what da Silva said, was plastered all over Brazilian press. Because the Portuguese people, they can't stand the propaganda. So I don't know how there's new CNN Portugal that's rolled out over the past couple of years, and it's total propaganda. And it's awful, really, really bad. It's even worse than American propaganda, CNN. And one thing about the Portuguese people that we've learned is there'll be all sorts of signs like down with propaganda, down with propaganda. I don't recall ever driving through the United States seeing signs condemning propaganda. Ever. Yes. I don't ever see that. So when they see these videos of da Silva been playing around and the people are gathered on TVs watching this, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy in support of this. So flashback to what happened in Portugal just a short time ago, when Portugal told the United States, hey, we make the rules, butt out, United States. Here was the story. This is the Reuters story at the time. Portuguese leaders have criticized U.S. Ambassador George Glass after he said they must choose between the United States and China or risk the consequences. So George Glass telling Portugal, and he's living here as the ambassador in their country, you must choose between the United States or China or face the consequences. Or what? Hey, wait a minute. We're Portugal. You mean the land in the Azores, that we gave you to build a military base reluctantly. We didn't want to do it. We did it because you basically forced us to at the hand of NATO. What consequences? What consequences? Could we take that land back, or would the United States take over the Azores? I mean, this is a strategic. The Azores, one of the most strategic points in the world.
The United States did consider taking over the Azores, and that was one of the reasons that Salazar felt like he had to tread so lightly with the United States during World War II, because if you recall, Salazar was one of very few leaders that was able to maintain peace during World War II. He kept his country completely. People think it was only Switzerland. It wasn't. Portugal also maintained neutrality, but he agonized over whether or not the United States would just flat out take the Azores because of the military, because it could act as a great aircraft carrier for launching into Russia.
Right.
To Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now Russia and wherever else we want to, wherever else the United States wants to use
Well,
as
we've
a
got
launching
closer
pad.
ones to that. But if you recall, this article came out towards the end of the Trump administration. George Glass was the Trump-appointed ambassador. And when this came out, it was sort of sensationalized because at the time in the embassy, there was like a bust or something of Trump. And the Espresso newspaper that published this had a picture of Ambassador Glass and this like maybe not attractive bust of Trump's head. And it ran with the story as if this was sort of Trump bloviating. And they were able to sort of write it off at the time as like, this is just Trump being crazy, telling us that, Portugal shouldn't over-align itself with China. But now the Biden administration has doubled down on that and continues to push even harder. So it wasn't necessarily Trump. It was the United States position from further inside the establishment than Trump to undermine Chinese investment in important allied countries.
Yeah.
And I don't mean allied countries as in, you know what I mean?
Right. So again, there's just a common theme here, whether it's George Glass or these other guys, like, and Lula da Silva, like this theme among these Portuguese speaking countries right now, just like, hey, United States, keep your neck out of our business with how we relate to China right now and pushing for peace in Ukraine or how we do business deals with them right now. But the U.S. still threatening like security and defense issues with Portugal over this. Like, this is at the heart of it, right? It's like, well, what are the consequences are we talking about? Like, or else, like, be careful how you relate to China.
But it's very condescending because they're pointing out all of the utility companies and all of the telecommunications that have Chinese interests and saying, you didn't think this through. You don't know what you're doing. The Portuguese are very good at bureaucracy. They love it. They know exactly who is invested where. There's a saying here, falta papel, like there is everything documented. And so it's not like they haven't thought this through. It's very condescending to say you haven't thought about this.
Right. Yeah. If it's one thing that they do, they take their time and figure things out.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
What's frustrating is like, our infrastructure, as far as internet and 5G and all that stuff, it's on a Huawei backbone, and there's no United States company that makes any of that stuff. It all comes from China. So if we do something radical to China and they stop providing us with the backbone of our internet, the backbone of our cellular service, like, we're screwed.
Yeah.
Yes, but it does go both ways because a lot of their internet comes through our servers as well. So Edward Snowden makes
true, but I think they'd be better off than we would be if we lost their technology versus them losing ours.
Yes.
I feel.
Yeah, that's probably quantifiable, but I'm not comfortable saying.
Well, it also really comes down to rare earth metals too, and we don't have any. And
we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
We don't mine them. We have too many lawsuits.
Right, that's what I mean.
Preventing the mining of them. Yeah. Yep.
So let us know your thoughts on this. Let us know your thoughts on this. And someone said in the chat, all of the news channels in Portugal are propaganda. Well, I mean, that's the same with mainstream media. If you have any mainstream media, I'm just pointing out the new CNN that just rolled out recently is just awful. It's like shovel.
I don't enjoy it.
No, it's really bad. So, but yeah, anyway. So that's our thoughts. leave us a comment on that in the chat below. We've got more news to get to on your Taco Tuesday. We're going to talk about the energy crisis facing Europe and what Finland just did and Germany did not. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Saturday Night Live with a very bizarre sketch that likes to lecture all of us about how to raise our children. We'll get to that in just a moment. We're going to do that. But first, boy, you feel like it's getting harder to get in shape these days, stay in shape. And I'm not talking about the flu that I just had or still have or what the hell I have right now. I don't know. But just in general for guys right now. And that's why Nugenix Total T is offering a complimentary bottle. When you text 231-231, enter the keyword redacted. So if you're getting older, it's changed your body, maybe get a bit of the dad bod, feeling a lot less like your old self. You don't have time to work out, but you want the energy and the body that you once had. You got to try Nugenix, and you probably will feel revived, working out just like you used to. It's amazing. If you want more energy to counter the negative effects of aging, Nugenix Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym, help you get back to looking and feeling like the man that you really want to be. So, men, you got to check this out. Nugenix Total T contains man-boosting key ingredients like Testofen. It's been validated in 5 clinical studies shown to boost free testosterone levels in men. Nugenix Total T can help re-energize your life, help you get back to the powerful, confident, good-looking warrior that you used to be. Back in the day, maybe college, maybe in your 20s, maybe your early 30s. Nugenix Total T is the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Nugenix Total T, you get the same clinical potency levels used in the trials, and Nugenix formulation is backed by 10 years of science and research. So right now, you get a complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T when you text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. Text now and get a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, which is their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast, absolutely free. Text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. Text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply. All right.
All right, let's talk about the energy crisis in Europe and beyond, because it does seem like the countries that are deciding to politicize energy consumption are the ones that are suffering the most. Germany didn't listen to Greta Thunberg. They shut down their nuclear plants and will now return to coal-powered plants. Remember a few months ago when activist Greta Thunberg was arrested in Germany? Here's that footage.
You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. The first person to the identity check. We inform you that you...
What's happening there is that she was protesting the building of a new coal plant and insisting that Germany reverse course on shutting down nuclear power. In this case, we think she was correct. There is no sense in closing down affordable energy that has no carbon emissions in favor of coal, which is neither affordable nor sustainable. I want to remind you that nuclear has the lowest mortality rate of any other energy source per terawatt hour. Here is recent statistics. Actually, no, that says 2012, but these numbers hold up. That coal is the most dangerous, followed by oil, then natural gas, hydro, solar, wind, and nuclear at the bottom has the lowest death rate. Now, you think nuclear and you think, oh no, that's dangerous because of these famous accidents. Well, Fukushima was an earthquake, and many nuclear plants have since been retrofitted for earthquakes. And Chernobyl was human error. That's well documented, actually. So nuclear is not as dangerous as one might think. It just has a bad rap. Now, many countries that are not in the weeds in politics seem to know this. Argentina, for example, is trying to move forward in a partnership with China to build out more nuclear plants. This Reuters article really floors me because see the picture there? It looks like it could come from like Star Trek. Like that's the computers they're using. But it does say here that this picture was taken in April Doesn't that look?
It looks like it's right out of the the Chernobyl. It looks like it's right out of the HBO show
Right.
Chernobyl.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
From 1980s. You know?
Yeah, I stared at this picture for a long time and I was like, what there dates this? I guess the flat screen TVs in the far back, and then, you know, some of the monitors are flat screen, but the rest of it, I'm like, is that what a nuclear control room looks like?
But look at the byline, or look at the what do you call it? The courtesy at the bottom of the photo. It says picture taken April 4th, 2022.
Right.
So yeah.
And so it has to be. I even was
Maybe-
like, I looked at the. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, maybe according to international law, it's required to look like The Simpsons. Just because it's a nuclear power plant.
It totally does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the phones do look like they're from at least the last 20 years, but I stared at this for a long time today. But nevertheless, and it's interesting because I'm going to show you some images of the new Finland nuclear power plant, and they look very modern. So I don't know why this picture of this one in Argentina looks so kind of anachronistic, but nevertheless, I haven't been there. If you have, let me know. Now, interestingly, Argentina was the first South American country to have nuclear power. And now that they've had a taste, they want more. And so they are turning to China because they have had an economic crisis. And they think that China will lend them the money. And they have been working towards that in what seems to be a friendly way. Now, recall that Argentina also wants to move itself off of the dollar and partner up with Brazil for the SUR, which is what they want to call a bloc type currency for all of South America. If they do that, then automatically they are removed from the dollar for their sort of usury exchange rate. And then they don't have quite as much of a cash crisis. So it's interesting to see these South American countries saying, if we have a little bit more autonomy, we have more power to do what we want. And what do we want is nuclear energy. Now, countries, though, that are politicizing their energy seem to be doing the opposite. This weekend, Germany shut down the last of its nuclear plants. They've been warning they were going to do this, and they did, in fact, do it over the weekend. They shut down one and then the next. They did this despite protests from activists like Greta Thunberg, and despite the fact that 69% of the German public in surveys said that they support some form of continued nuclear power.
Fucking idiots. I'm sorry.
Right, because now they are building coal, and coal kills more people. From not just mining coal, not just delivering coal, but also the burning of coal and the carbon emissions of coal and the inhalation of people who work in the coal industry and cook with coal. I don't know. I mean, it's really inexplicable. Germany says they're doing this because they can't rely on Russian gas, but they're just pretending that nuclear did not exist in the middle of that spectrum of options. It's very inexplicable. Meanwhile, Finland, which is playing politics with energy by trying to join NATO at least, but they are investing in nuclear. This is I'm not sure, help me say this word, Olkiluoto 3. Olkiluoto. We're going to call it the OL3 because they do.
The only way I could help you say that is if I knew how to spell it, but you don't have to do that. So I'll just take your word. I'll take your word for it. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't reading my notes.
You also could read the notes.
But I'm listening to you. I'd rather look at you and listen to you.
Okay, darling. So the OL3 nuclear plant went online this weekend, and that makes it the largest nuclear plant in Europe. Now, they're calling it the greatest single climate act in Finland. So it will power on this one island 30% of Finland's electricity from one big nuclear plant. And it will not have carbon emissions because nuclear doesn't. I mean, from the plant production itself, there is a carbon impact of mining and enriching the uranium as well.
You know, as Grasshopper points out in the chat, they're doing this on purpose by the World Economic Forum, right? I mean,
who's they? Because we're pointing out very different.
Well, you're right. When you shut down these nuclear plants, they're doing it because it's all part of the globalist agenda, right? They want to make sure that all of these people who make solar panels and wind farms and all of that make billions of dollars and run, and the lithium battery capacity, all of that, massive amounts of money that is being spent on that. very little money goes in. They're not making money on the nuclear power, right? They're not making that money. There's not huge nuclear reactor
Somebody is.
but very
Countries
few.
that
Very
export
little.
uranium are.
Yes. Right. Very, very little. So we don't, and 65 to 70% of all the uranium comes from Russia. Comes
And
right
South
out of
America.
Russia. And yeah, but most of it comes from Russia. So they're trying to get away, in the United States has no uranium production at all, virtually nothing. There's one uranium mine. That's it. So it's all World Economic Forum plan to get us away from that, so that all of these other renewables, so to speak, can be profitable as part of their plan.
That is a theory. You're right.
Yes. Although
I see where you're going with that.
Although they've told us that, and it's on their frickin' website, and that's exactly what they say year in and year out at their World Economic Forum conventions, but it is also a theory of mine.
Okay. We'll put it on our scoreboard.
It's too bad for Germany that pro-Ukrainian forces blew up that one pipeline they had going for them.
Right.
Because they couldn't use that right now without all the nuclear.
It sucks that Putin went down in his little submersible sub and blew up his own pipeline. Putin.
Right. When you think of
Germany
the energy that Germans thought that they would have to power their schools and, heat their homes and keep hospitals running and whatnot, they thought they had these nuclear plants that were providing them affordable energy with no carbon footprint. They thought they might have gas at an affordable price. They have neither of those things, and they will instead return to coal.
Yeah.
At a high price.
It's madness. And as Colonel Douglas McGregor has said on our show, he spent a lot of time in Germany. He said Germans have no idea what's coming. He said they have never experienced this, and they have no idea what's coming. It's going to be a dark day for Germany.
What were you going to say, Philip?
I was just going to say, this is one of those, like an example of government like making a decision and then not reacting to changes in the situation. They're still going forward with it. So it's like when they made this decision, that's why all of the Nord Stream pipelines went up. They're like, we're getting rid of nuclear after Fukushima. So they're like making all these deals with Russia. Then things change. They no longer have that other side of it, but they're still like, well, no, we're still shutting them down. And it's just like, why? You got to pivot. You have to pivot.
Well, one of the things that politicians say about nuclear is that it's just a little too good, and so it doesn't encourage people to conserve. So then more people will plug in their toothbrushes and their, thermometers and everything that you can power will be powered. Why is that
Because like the West is known as being like what like we have so much temperance in things. Like we're just like excess is what we're all about.
Right.
Like we need that.
We need 3 refrigerators, one in the garage for our Bud Light, our Mulvaney Bud Light, and we need a freezer, and we need another refrigerator in the house in the United States, and you need all of these things.
Yes. So, that's why you see this sort of politics playing of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, who are saying, no, we can't have nuclear because we care about the environment and it's going to encourage more consumption. And what they want instead is to encourage people to reduce. We've talked many times about the politics of asking people to reduce their consumption of really anything and how it's just not a feasible economic model to ever ask anybody to compromise their life comfort.
Well, isn't it ridiculous also? Because what you're basically saying is, let's not have growth. Let's not have capitalism. Let's not have companies expanding, hiring more people because people might like that type of juice that you produce, and people then buy it, and more people get jobs as a result of consumption and purchases. Do the less of that. Buy fewer things. Don't make your economy burn and churn. Spend less. All of those things.
Right. I mean, the plant we talked about in Argentina would have employed the one that they want to complete. They already have 3, and I think they want 2 more. Would bring on 700 new jobs, and I think it additionally power the country by up to 10%. Right now, I think it's only 7% of Argentina is nuclear powered. But think of the prosperity that something like that brings. And Bjorn Lundberg, in his book False Alarm, talks about how when people increase their prosperity, they lower their carbon footprint, because there is a peak where you stop, say, cooking on gas that is more harmful or whatever, you stop using certain things, you maybe upgrade to certain
Well,
things.
he talks about you stop using like cow dung to cook on,
Right.
which is like highly toxic. And then a lot of poor countries do that. They actually use manure to cook on, right?
Yeah.
So you stop using those things when you have more abundant electricity, you have more access to power and fuel readily available that allows people to prosper. So it's amazing the sort of counterintuitive thinking that
And
goes
also,
on here.
like there are small sort of measurable economic markers. For instance, you know, if you're buying something, say, I think about when my kids were little, I didn't want to buy them plastic bottles because I was worried about the BPA and the BPS. So I bought glass bottles, and then the glass bottles lasted all 3 babies. Or the cloth diapers that I bought. Like, you buy the more expensive thing the first time, and it lasts longer. So you have people buying fewer things because they buy more quality things if their prosperity increases. And all of these things sort of work into the economic model of, if you promote prosperity for all, rising tide floats all boats. And in fact, it does lower the carbon footprint of people's lives when they are more prosperous.
Yeah, makes sense.
So those kind of things absolutely do make a difference. But anyone who's arguing for other people to consume less has not looked at economic models. They're only virtue signaling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyhow, that's sort of the politics of energy as it stands this week. This is something we cover here a lot. We appreciate your comments, and we'd like to let us know what's happening in your neck of the woods. What is the energy situation there?
Yeah. We've got more news to get to here on the show. We're going to talk about this SNL story in just a moment, and how Saturday Night Live basically sticks it to the left, perhaps. We'll tell you about that. We're going to go into all of that.
Well, I want to say this before what they're saying is that Republicans are really hung up on kids' genitals, when what Republicans want to do is leave genitals as they are. They want to not mutilate genitals. And they're calling that fixation on genitals. It's a really bad faith argument. It's crazy. I want you to stick around and talk about it with me. Are you laughing, Philip?
No, that was a chair.
Oh, okay.
So we'll get to
chair, but I am laughing.
We'll get to all of that.
Inside.
We'll get to all of that and more. But first, well, the United States just released new economic data showing lower than expected inflation numbers. As a result, U.S. stock futures rose sharply. U.S. bond yields fell as market expectations for continued tightening by the Federal Reserve have now cooled off. And the Fed futures markets are looking at interest rate cuts coming this summer. That could be good for the housing market, but it could be bad, of course, for a broader recession. So the Fed is getting us ready for a recession. But the stock market doesn't seem to mind. The Dow futures, the NASDAQ futures jumped on this news, but at the same time, gold is nearing an all-time high. So all of these things are hard to keep track of. And that's why I often use the Moomoo app or the Moomoo app on my Mac for great economic information, because Moomoo offers 24/7 global financial news to help you stay on top of the market trends, grab the changes quickly. So I see these every morning when I go over my portfolio. Right there, I can read the Fed policy. I can see the related reports immediately right inside the Moomoo app. Also, they have a Moomoo community with over 19 million people from 200 countries sharing their investment experience, which is really interesting to read. Right now, you can get up to 15 free stocks just for opening an account with Moomoo and making your initial deposit. Moomoo is a safe and reliable platform. The overseas version, called Futsu, has been listed on NASDAQ in the United States for a long time. With 19 million registered users, Moomoo can also trade U.S. stocks, Hong Kong stocks, and Australian stocks. It's one of my favorite trading apps where I set my alerts about my commodity stocks that I like to trade. They also have earnings seasons calendars built right in, so you can see these different companies' earnings and a ton of related research reports. They're useful, especially when you decide to start investing in a company. Besides, if you want to learn how to invest, there are more than 2,000 free investing courses on the Moomoo platform. You can customize your study plans as well. And the app also offers more investment insights like institution tracking. You can see what famous financial institutions are investing in. You want to follow a big hedge fund? You can do that right inside the app. Try it today and get 15 free stocks when you download the app and make your initial deposits. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Again, redacted.inc/mumu. Try it today. All right. Well, we got more news to get to. We're going to talk about this Saturday Night Live skit that is going crazy. I think Saturday Night Live has totally lost its mind. I saw some people in the chat as we were talking about it said, "You think she's making this up? What she just teased about this?" No, she's not. We're going to get to that. For that though, we can't talk about that here on YouTube. Our stream will continue though on another platform. Our stream will continue right there on the screen. But we cannot talk about this on YouTube. So if you'd like to, well, I don't know how to say this.
We should tell them that there are certain terms of service that have changed since we went on break around this platform. We can at least give them that much.
Why don't you be
right?
specific about it?
Okay. Should I say here on the platform we are on right now on YouTube? New terms of service say that if we point you to things on the internet that they don't like, we can be held liable for that. So you know that there's another platform that we stream on where we are able to say things a bit more freely, more than a bit, a lot more freely. But now, if we even say those words come to us here, what we surmise from these changes in terms of service is that they will be looking for people to ask them to go to another free speech platform, and they will ding us for it. The reason we care is because then we wouldn't be able to come to you on YouTube. We don't want to get docked for that. We want to follow the rules because we are here on this platform. But we are not going to sort of tempt fate. So we're going to tell you we're going to the alternate platform. We will put the URL on the screen. You can click it, but we just don't want to risk being penalized.
Yeah, to sum up, we're not telling you what to do. We're telling you what we're going to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, that's the best way to say it. We can't tell you what to do with the next 15 minutes of your life, 20 minutes of your life. If you'd like to continue watching our show, where we will continue to do the live show, that's totally up to you. We're going to tell you that our show will continue, but we're going to end our time here on YouTube today. But our show will continue on a totally other platform at rumble.com/redacted.
And also, I'm just going to tell you what I think of that, which is that seems to me an increasingly authoritarian rule. We don't have to like it, but we're going to comply with it.
Yeah, it also shows that what companies they deem a threat right now. Just point that out. That's another clear a clear sign in my opinion.
Jared Goetz in the chat says that policy reeks of desperation. We are agreed.
Yeah,
we are agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, so join us or don't. Do what you'd like.
It's totally up to you.
Here's where we're going.
No one's telling you what to do with your night. You can do whatever you want. But by